We spend so much of our time looking ahead, right?
Hmm.
Setting goals, planning the next thing.
Mm.
But what if some of the best insights for living well actually come from looking back?
That's a really interesting point.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into end-of-life regrets. Those reflections people have right at the end, which can, well, maybe teach us how to live more fully now.
It was pretty amazing how perspective shifts when time feels, well, finite. Suddenly the small stuff fades, doesn't it?
Totally. And you get this clearer picture of what really mattered, and
Hmm.
maybe even more, what didn't.
Exactly.
And probably the most well-known work on this is from Bronnie Ware, the palliative care nurse.
Hmm.
Her blog post back in, 2009, about the top 5 regrets of the dying, it just went everywhere.
Oh, absolutely. I remember that. Spread like wildfire.
Yeah.
And her insights came straight from caring for patients in their final weeks, usually the last 3 to 12 weeks or so. It clearly struck a chord.
It really did. Her book, The Top 5 Regrets, it's been translated into, like, dozens of languages.
Which just shows how universal these themes are, you know? Our shared mortality, this deep desire for a meaningful life, one we don't look back on with huge disappointment.
That universality is so powerful, isn't these deeply personal thoughts that somehow connect with all of us?
It is, though it's worth remembering where this comes from. It's Ware's personal observations, her memoir of those experiences.
Right, it's not like a formal scientific study with control groups and all that.
Exactly. It's narrative, it's powerful, but it's observational. And, some have critiqued it for potential bias or lack of methodological rigor, which is fair to note.
Sure.
But what's so compelling, I think, despite those limitations, is how consistently these themes she identified pop up elsewhere. They align so well with core human values and establish psychological ideas about our basic needs.
Yeah, that's what we found too. When you dig into the psychology, these regrets often point straight to unmet needs, like our need for autonomy, feeling in charge of our own lives.
Hmm. And relatedness, connection with others, competence, feeling effective. These are big concepts in frameworks like self-determination theory, for instance, or positive psychology.
Exactly. So that's really our mission for this deep dive. We're not just going to list the regrets. We want to unpack the psychology behind them.
What drives them? What contributes to them?
And most importantly, what practical evidence-informed things can you, the listener, actually do to live more intentionally and maybe sidestep some of these?
Okay, let's jump in. The first one, it's often cited as the most common. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me.
Wow. That one hits hard. It's that tension, isn't it, between what we want and what everyone else seems to expect.
It really is. It captures that deep ache of unfulfilled potential, living a life based on external pressures, parents, society, whatever, instead of your own authentic self. That feeling of, I didn't pursue what really lit me up.
So psychologically, what's going on there? What's the core struggle?
Well, a huge part is that frustrated need for autonomy we mentioned. We're wired to want control, to act in line with our genuine selves. When we constantly choose based on others' expectations, we chip away at that.
Ah,
Think about someone pushed into a sensible career when they dreamed of being an artist. That constant nagging feeling of, this isn't me, it just grinds you down.
and fear plays a big role too, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Fear of disapproval, fear of failure if you step off the safe path. And there's also this existential idea of bad faith, sort of denying your own freedom and possibilities by just going along.
So how does this actually look in people's lives? Can you give some examples?
Sure, it could be choosing that career path just to please your parents, or staying in a relationship that feels empty because, well, you feel you should be partnered up.
Or hiding a passion because it seems weird or unconventional?
Exactly. Suppressing those unique interests, often not one big decision, but lots of small compromises that add up over time until you feel like you're living someone else's script.
Really makes you think about listening to that inner voice, even if it's quiet.
Okay, regret number 2. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. This one feels very relevant today.
It certainly does. This is about looking back and feeling you poured too much energy into work, into career, and missed out on, well, life,
Yeah.
especially relationship.
Time with family, friends.
Yeah, missing those irreplaceable moments, kids
Mhm.
growing up, anniversaries, just being present with loved ones. We're noted this came up a lot with older men, maybe from generations where being the provider was the primary focus.
What are the psychological drivers pushing people towards that kind of imbalance?
Well, there's definitely societal pressure, right? We often equate success with climbing the ladder, making more money.
Sure.
There's also genuine anxiety about financial security, driving long hours. And for many, work is where they feel competent, accomplished. That feeling is rewarding.
Mm-hmm. You get validation there. You do. But the regret comes when you realize you traded deep connection, that need for relatedness, for that feeling of competence. And sometimes that hedonic treadmill idea fits too. Success brings a temporary boost, but then you need more, so you keep striving, often sacrificing other things.
So it's that constant push for more achievement, potentially crowding out connection.
Yeah.
What does that look like day to day?
Oh, it's often just consistently long hours becoming the default, choosing work events over family time again and again.
Being physically home, but your mind's still at the office.
Precisely. That lack of presence, the lines just blur until work dominates everything. It's usually a gradual creep.
A real wake-up call to check our priorities. Okay, third regret. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
This taps into emotional honesty.
Yes, and this is about the pain of holding back. Not just negative stuff like anger or sadness, but positive feelings too. Love, gratitude.
Oh, interesting. Both sides.
Both sides. People wish they'd been more open, more honest, especially with those closest to them. Where saw this leading to unresolved stuff, relationships feeling a bit shallow, maybe, and lingering bitterness. Imagine carrying all those unspoken words.
Yeah, that sounds heavy.
Hmm.
What stops us? What are the psychological barriers here?
Fear is a big one again. Fear of being vulnerable, of showing your true self and maybe getting rejected.
Or fear of conflict, just wanting to keep the peace.
Exactly, avoiding confrontation. Plus, societal or family rules about emotions, boys don't cry, or whatever it might be.
Right.
And sometimes it's simply not having the skills, low emotional intelligence maybe, not knowing how to express feelings constructively. Psychologically, holding back undermines autonomy, not expressing your inner state, and it definitely damages relatedness by preventing real intimacy.
So it's this internal battle, wanting connection but being held back by fear or maybe habit. How does this actually manifest? What are the behaviors?
It looks like avoiding those necessary difficult conversations, saying yes all the time when you really mean no, just to avoid friction.
People-pleasing, basically.
Yeah, a form of it. Holding on to grudges instead of addressing the hurt. Or, on the flip side, not telling people you love and appreciate them. Over time, it just creates distance.
Definitely highlights the need for healthy communication. Okay, fourth regret. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. Oof. This one feels personal for many of us in busy lives.
It really does. This one is about realizing, often later in life, just how incredibly valuable those long-term friendships were. People regret letting those bonds drift because of work, family, or just taking them for granted.
You miss that shared history, right? The support.
Exactly. That unique comfort of someone who's known you for ages. Looking back, people really feel that loss.
Why do we let these important connections slide? What's the psychology?
Well, honestly, life gets busy. Immediate demands, work deadlines, kids' needs, they often seem more urgent than nurturing friendships. It takes conscious effort, right? Scheduling calls, making time.
Yeah, it doesn't just happen automatically.
No. And there's maybe some complacency, assuming the friendship will just endure. Or sometimes life changes, moves, new jobs, personal struggles can lead to unintentional drifting. This regret really screams unmet need for relatedness. We need those social connections beyond our immediate family for well-being. All the research backs that up.
So it's often that slow fade. Missed calls become missed months, then years. What does this look like practically?
It's just that a gradual drop in how often you talk or see each other, missing major life events, feeling that growing distance. Even if you live far apart, the real issue is often just not putting in the proactive effort to bridge that gap.
A strong reminder to actively invest in friendships. Okay, the final one, number 5. I wish I had let myself be happier. Seems simple, but it feels huge.
It is huge. It's this realization that happiness isn't just something that happens to you based on circumstances. It's also, to a large extent, an internal choice, something you can cultivate.
So people regret not choosing it more often.
Yeah, or getting stuck in old patterns, habits of worry or negativity, not recognizing they had agency in their own joy. They look back and wish they hadn't let fear or habit stop them from experiencing more contentment.
What gets in the way? Why don't we just choose happiness? Seems easy when you say it like that.
If only. Well, fear of change is a big one. We stick to the familiar, even if it's not making us happy. Comfort zones can be traps.
Okay.
Habitual negative thinking patterns can be really ingrained. Also, maybe a belief that happiness is dependent on external things, the right job, the right partner, enough money.
Waiting for happiness to arrive from the outside.
Exactly. And that idea of hedonic adaptation is relevant too. We tend to bounce back to a baseline happiness level, so we need conscious effort, like gratitude practices, to sustain more joy. Ultimately, this regret points to not fully using our autonomy to shape our own inner world.
So it plays out as staying stuck in jobs, relationships.
Yes, staying in unsatisfying situations too long, dwelling on worries, focusing on what's wrong instead of what's right, postponing joy, I'll be happy when, but when never quite comes. It's often a passive approach rather than actively seeking and creating joy.
Such a powerful thought. Happiness is a practice, not a destination. Looking at all five, they really do seem tangled up together, don't they?
Oh, definitely. They're rarely separate issues. Like if you're not living authentically, regret one, maybe you pour yourself into work you don't love, regret two.
Which might make you suppress your true feelings about it, regret 3.
Right. And being overworked and unhappy makes it hard to nurture friendships, regret four.
And all that makes it pretty difficult to just let yourself be happy, regret 5.
Exactly. It can be a real domino effect. One area impacts the other significantly.
Now, while these regrets feel so universal, you mentioned earlier that culture can shape how they show up.
That's a really important nuance.
Yeah.
The underlying needs, autonomy, relatedness, etc., seem universal, but how they play out in terms of regret can definitely be shaped by culture.
How so?
Well, think about individualism versus collectivism. In a very collectivist culture, maybe the living true to myself regret looks more like failing family obligations rather than pursuing a purely personal dream.
Okay, I see.
And cultural norms around showing emotion will obviously affect how regret 3 expressing feelings manifests. What's considered acceptable varies hugely.
And what about things like gender roles or even generational differences?
Also, key factors. Ware herself noted the work regret being strong in older men, tied to traditional provider roles. Younger generations might have different pressure or expectations around work-life balance or emotional openness, so their regrets might look different down the line.
And surely socioeconomic status plays a role. It's a privilege to even consider choosing passion over paycheck sometimes.
Absolutely. Critical point. Economic necessity drastically limits choices for many people. Regretting not pursuing a passion isn't the same if the alternative was basic survival. So the regret might stem more from systemic barriers, lack of opportunity, than pure personal choice in those cases. Ware's observations likely came from people with at least some degree of choice, theoretically.
So the core needs are universal, but the context, culture, economics, generation really matters in how these regrets surface.
Precisely. Context is everything in understanding the specific shape these take.
Okay, so we've explored the regrets, the why behind them, the context. Let's pivot to the what now. What are some concrete, actionable strategies, pulling from Ware and psychology, to help us live more intentionally and hopefully avoid these deep regrets? Starting with authenticity, regret 1.
All right. To cultivate authenticity, a great starting point is values clarification. Like, really take some time to figure out what truly matters to you. What are your core principles?
How do you do that practically?
Journaling helps. Reflection prompts. Asking yourself what you admire, what makes you angry, what you're drawn to. Then consciously try to align your choices with those values. Ask, does this decision fit who I want to be?
Okay, know your values, align actions. What else?
Self-awareness is key. Pay attention to your gut feelings. Discomfort, resentment, joy. They're signals about whether you're on track or off track for you. Mindfulness helps here too.
Listening to those internal cues.
Yes. And finally, finding the courage to act authentically. It doesn't have to be a massive life change overnight. Start small. Make one choice today that feels true, even if it's just saying no to something that doesn't align with your priorities or energy. Practice setting those boundaries.
Small steps build courage. Got it. Now, what about balancing work and life, avoiding regret too?
First, consciously prioritize relationships and presence. That means scheduling dedicated time for loved ones. Put it in the calendar like an important meeting. And when you're with them, be with them. Put the phone away, engage. Quality over quantity often.
Be present. Makes sense.
Second, maybe redefine what success means to you. Is it just the job title and salary? Or does it include health, relationships, learning, contributing? Broaden that definition and check if your life reflects it.
A more holistic view of success.
Exactly. And third, set clear work boundaries. This is tough in our always-on world, but crucial. Define work hours, have tech-free time or zones, learn to delegate or say no to unreasonable demands, actively protect your personal time.
Boundaries are so important. Okay, moving to expressing feelings, regret 3. How do we get better at that?
It starts with developing emotional literacy. Can you even identify what you're feeling? Name it accurately. Understand that emotions aren't good or bad, they're information. Learn healthy ways to cope, not just suppress.
Understanding your own emotions first.
Yes. Then practice assertive communication. That's expressing your needs and feelings directly, respectfully, not aggressively. Statements are great for this. I feel X when Y happens. And don't forget positive feelings. Express appreciation, affection.
And the good stuff, too.
Absolutely. And finally, cultivate safe relationships. Choose partners, friends, workplaces where it feels okay to be vulnerable and open. And be willing to initiate those sometimes difficult conversations constructively, focusing on understanding, not blame.
Building skills in safe spaces. Good. What about nurturing friendships? Avoiding regret 4.
This one really requires intentional effort. Schedule check-ins. Treat friendships like important commitments, because they are. Don't just wait for it to happen.
Be proactive.
Definitely. Also, maybe focus on quality over quantity. Deep connections with a few close friends often mean more than many superficial ones. Be present, offer support, invest in those key relationships.
Okay.
And importantly, overcome inertia. If you've lost touch, don't let awkwardness stop you from reaching out. Just send that text, make that call. Often people are thrilled to reconnect. Take the first step.
Don't let time become a barrier.
Mm.
Great advice. And finally, how do we actively choose happiness? Addressing regret 5.
Well, a few powerful practices here. First, cultivate gratitude and savoring. Actively look for things to be thankful for, big or small. Maybe keep a journal, maybe just pause during the day. And when good things happen, really soak them and savor the moment.
Focusing on the positive, appreciating it.
Yes. Second, practice mindful awareness and acceptance. Notice your thoughts and feelings without judging them harshly. Accept that discomfort is part of life, but it doesn't have to run the show. Learn to manage negative thought spirals. Maybe explore cognitive behavioral techniques.
Being aware without getting swept away.
Exactly. And third, actively engage in meaningful activities. Pursue hobbies, interests, things that bring you joy or a sense of purpose, just for their own sake, and be willing to embrace change. Step out of your comfort zone sometimes to find that joy.
Finding joy and meaning through
Mhm.
action, it really does feel like all these strategies feed into each other, creating a more intentional way of living overall.
They absolutely do. And it's not about aiming for some impossible, regret-free life. That's not realistic.
Right, imperfection is part of it.
Totally. The goal is more about awareness, making conscious choices, maybe choosing courage over comfort sometimes, and having self-compassion along the way. It's about reducing those deep, fundamental regrets that come from feeling you didn't live fully or authentically.
So as you've been listening, we really encourage you to think, which of these regrets, or maybe which of these preventative strategies, resonates most with you right now?
Yeah, which one feels most relevant? And that brings us to a final thought for you to mull over. What if you proactively addressed just one of these potential regrets, even in a small way?
How might taking one small step today towards more authenticity or deeper connection, or just allowing more joy, how might that actually shift the trajectory and meaning of your life right now?
What's one tiny doable step you could take today, inspired by the wisdom of those looking back from life's final chapter?